Alright, today we're going to talk about the last component of Access. We've already talked about tables. This is an example of a table. It's just all the data, all the many, possibly thousands or millions of rows of information. That's the tables. We talked about the query. The query is where you can, let me go back to design view here. The query is where you can select individual fields and sort them. You can use a criteria to only show states values from SC, for example, and it pulls only values from SC. That is, of course, go back to queries here. That is, of course, queries. I don't have a form on here, but remember the form is just a quick way to view or add new values without having to see every record, as in where it won't look like a spreadsheet. So if I go to form design, you recall we bound it using data, and then we go to add existing fields, and we could pull over fields, and we would align them, change the colors, position them. We added buttons down here to allow the user to quickly go through the different forms. Even closing out the program, opening up other forms, we did all that. So that's the three main types of well, that's the three previous types we've talked about. Today we'll talk about the fourth, and that is reports. Now reports are similar to forms in a way, in that it is a way of presenting the data from a table in a little bit more easy to read format. But just keep in mind, though, the ultimate goal of reports are to be printed on a printer, or to summarize. I guess you don't have to print them, but to view them on the screen. But they're typically going to summarize many rows at one time, not just show one record at a time. It's going to show all 50 states or all of the values. And I'll just go through and make an example. I think it'll be simpler. So we're going to go to Create. We're going to go to Report Design. And you can tell already it does look like a form. It gives you the same grid that we had with a form. We're going to do the same first step. We're going to go to Properties, and we're going to bind it to our table. Notice also that our queries are also listed. Queries act just like tables. So once you have a query, you can actually use that as the source of a form or a report. But we'll just use TV for now. Once we have it bound, we can go back to Add Existing Fields. And you can see all of our fields, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to drag over a few. Let me start with just this one. Here's where it really starts becoming a little different in the purpose. Let me actually run this and just show you what it looks like if you didn't make any changes. You see call sign in the first box. If I scroll down a little bit and go to page 2, you're going to see another call sign. Let me go back and actually show... Typically what you're going to do is you're going to pull this detail area. You don't need it that large, because this is going to be this size for each record in your database. If we have 1,000 records, it's going to be 6 inches per record. That's a lot of paper. So I'm going to pull this kind of up to the top, and I'm going to pull this way up so it's just a little bit bigger than the actual text we need. And now I'm going to go back to print and preview, and you can see how what a difference it made. It put everything much closer together. And that's what we're going for. We're going for maybe a series of columns. Let me go back and close it out. Another problem you're going to notice that we don't need to say call sign, call sign, call sign all the way down the page. That's fairly redundant. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that in the header. And if you notice here, this is something that the forms did not have, is that we have headers and footers. This is particularly on the page, and we're going to add some other headers and footers in a moment. So what we want is we want this label here. Remember, this is a text box, and this is a label. Text box is actually linked to actual data, as you can see, individual actual call signs, whereas the label is the same for everything. So we want to put this call sign up in the header, but there's a problem. When you drag it up there, it stops when it hits the little bar here. So little shortcut around that. I'm just going to click on it and hit Control X to cut. Click up in the header and hit Control V. So that's a little shortcut, a little way to get around that limitation. And I'm going to position it above it, and I'm going to slide this over. So think now you're kind of making a series of rows and columns now. And now we can go back over here and get city, And we'll do the same thing. I'm going to cut, move that up here, and we'll slide that over there, slide that over to there. Notice also there are some options for alignment. If I select two options or two boxes, I can go to align left, and it automatically aligns them. So don't try to guess, and that a lot of times that's the easiest way, just to use the align tool and be done a little easier. So Control X, paste. And that also works up here. So let's say I accidentally drag this one down a little too far. I can select all three of these, align to the top, and they're all lined to the top. So that's the easiest way to move those around. And I'm just going to drag one more over. We'll do our height, since we've used heights a good number of times. Height above sea level. Actually, let's just use height. This is the actual tower height. So Control X, paste up here, and I'll line that up, and that's pretty close there. Couple options. By default, if you remember, it was highlighting every other row. That's typically a good thing. I just want to show you where that feature is. Also, you notice it's putting these little boxes around. We don't really want that in a printout. So a couple things. Let's highlight everything first. Go over here to our properties, and under format, we're going to change the back style to transparent. So it makes it just whatever the paper is. And then the back or the border style, we want that to be transparent as well. That gets rid of all those little lines around each color. Now this gray is coming from an option underneath format. Just click on the section here for detail, and there's an alternate row color. And I mean, if you wanted to, you could make it a red color. You know, you can pick whatever color you want. Typically, a light gray is probably your best. Also, it's a good idea if you're going to highlight every other row to be gray. Notice how it's not really centered in the box there. The way you have to do that is you just manually drag this up and make it smaller until it's about, I think that's pretty close there, maybe 1 pixel too much, but that's a lot closer, so kind of gives a more centered look. I'm going to go back to the gray because I think that's plenty distinguished between the two. Now, so that's our report, and you could be done with that, but of course we're going to go on and show you some more of the options that you can use to customize this report. First of all, you need a title. It doesn't really tell you what this is a report of, so that would probably go in the page header. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this down, highlight all these at one time, and just pull these straight down, and then using a label, not a text box, but a label, I'm just going to say report title. You would typically need to be more creative or more accurate than that. So I'm going to make it a little bit larger. I went to the home ribbon to get to these font options, and it cuts it off, so I'm going to pull the box over and down, and I'm going to go up a little bit and center it. So you can also do page headers and footers. Obviously, things down here would be page numbers or maybe the name of a company, the name of the report. Maybe can also go down here. Let's go back to print preview. So we have our title there. Another thing we noticed are it's not in any kind of order. We have Colorado, California, Idaho. So now if this were based on a query and you had told it to sort in the query, then yes, this would be sorted as well already. But since we just pulled it from the database, from the table, there is no inherent sorting. And to do that, you need to go to the design ribbon and go to group and sort. And it adds this little window at the bottom of the screen here. It says add a group, which I'll come back to in a moment, and add a sort. So let's add a sort, and let's just pick state first. And then we can add another sort and say city. And that's probably good for now. So let's go back and look at what we have. And now we're back to our AB. I think it's Alberta. If we go to page 2, Alaska, and so forth. And within cities. So you have all the cities that are the same together as well. So that's sorting. Another thing that we can do is we're going to add groups now. You can see add a group and add a sort. A group is an actual maybe if I show you on the print preview, it'll help a little bit. Whenever, if I were to group by city, it will give me a little area of the page that I can put maybe a label or a value in whenever it goes from one city to the next. It's where it's going to group those together and give me either a header or a footer just for those cities that are the same. And let me just go ahead and do one. So let's do one for state, I guess, first of all. So I'm going to put a group state. Notice what it did is it added a little section right here. It starts out empty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my state here, and this time it will allow you to just drag it up there. And I'm going to kind of pull it over into that. So this is, remember, this is a text box. So this is going to change for each state that it sees. And just to make it a little more prominent, because it's a little hard to read when it's the same size as everything else, I'm going to bold it, and you could even add things like lines. If you go down here, there's a line tool. So if I wanted to really set it apart, I could, if I can draw a straight line here. Close enough. Not very, but so you can actually set it apart. Notice though that I've put it in the let's see, did I put that in the city state header? So every time, I'm sorry, we got this in the wrong order. We need to move the group by up to the top. So I'm going to move the group on state so it's first. Now when we go, okay, that looks better. I was wondering why we had so many ABs. Now all the Albertas are together. It just says AB and then a list of all of their call signs and cities. And if you eventually go to page 2, we'll see Alaska here. We can also add another group on city if we wanted to. And again, let me make that so it's second here. So group by city. And now just adding a group doesn't do anything but add a little area right here. If you actually want the city to appear only one time, then you're going to move your city up into that area, and then we're going to bold it. And I'll go ahead and make it a little bit larger here. Okay, so let's see what we have now. So now we have Alberta, and then we have Calgary, and those 5, and Cardston, and those 2. So notice also that, see how it's also highlighting every other city? Calgary is bolded, Cardston was not. This one is bolded, this one is not. So typically you're not going to want that for your groupings. So I'm going to click on this area, go to Format, and say No Color, and then repeat that on the city. Because I don't want that alternate color on the cities. It's fine for the. It still doesn't even look quite right for the once it's grouped, but at least it's only within one section. We go to none of these really have a large. Well, there's one that had a large number of. So that city had a large number of cities, so you can see the grouping there. While we're here, notice it says More, because there's always more options in Access. So I'm going to hit More. And you can see actually there's several other drop down boxes that we can add things. For example, this is an important one, without a footer. Well, if you do want a footer, we now have a state footer. So this will appear every time it stops with one state and goes to another state. If you think about it, if we had things like sales figures or populations, it could be adding up the population of every city, and then we can in the state we can put a total. In fact, let's go ahead and do a total. This probably won't make much sense for height, but let's do a total. And we're going to total on height. And let's say we want the average height, and we're going to put that in the group footer. And you can see it automatically added the average height in the state footer. So now if we go back to our preview again, let's go down to the bottom of, I actually want to go back and do one more thing. There's also one more helpful feature here. Under More, it says Do Not Keep Groups Together. I'm going to keep the group together on one page. So what happens is even though we had room for Alaska, it bumps Alaska to the next page, and that's a common way of creating a report. So here's the average height is 167.12. You can even go back and format these to show two decimal places, let's say a fixed of 2 decimal places. So you can even format it using your properties over here. Go back to page 2 here. So 167.61 is the average height. And again, we want to label that. So I'm going to go back to the state footer. And we're going to go to our labels, which are right here. And I'm going to say average tower height. These are all blue letters because it's defaulting that. But it doesn't really matter. You can change the color using the properties over here. So you always want to have a label. Let's go to page 2. We can see the average tower height is 167. You can also add things like we could just say count the call signs and show a footer for that. So that way it's going to show us how many there were. So let's go to page 2 again. And so 31, I didn't bother making a label for this, but there were 31 actual call signs or radio towers in Alberta. If you go to, let's go to another, Alaska apparently has a lot. There's 566 in Alaska with an average of 2.94. So again, just to point out, these are in the state footer, but every group could have its own footer just by going to Group By, More, and say with a footer. And then you can pick totals as well, the sum of all the students' fundraising values per class, per team, per state, per whatever group you pick, you can put totals at the bottom. So I think that's most of the things I wanted to show you on reports. I'm just going to do one more. Just as an example of something that would go in the page footer, page numbers. So I'm going to do page N of M, bottom, center, and it automatically puts that in the bottom there. Also, you can do what's called a report header and footer. We haven't, and what I did to get to that is I just went to the page header, and you can right click and go to, I think you can actually do that almost right clicking anywhere, report header and footer. Now, why would you want this? Well, this could be the cover or the title. Actually, I got that in the wrong spot. This report title should be up here because when you preview it, notice that it's going to repeat that at the top of every single page. So probably what I should put that is up here in the report header. So that will only appear one time. For some reason they default this to be blue. I don't know why. So I'm going to go over to this back color and pick white. I'm not sure why they do that. So now when I do my print preview one last time, it will do report title up here, but it will not repeat that on the next line, on the next page. It'll just be one time. And one little insert page break. If I click on this option and draw a line right here, it really does. It just puts this little kind of a little dotted symbol there. But what that does is that it says print preview. That says go to the next page after that. So I could create a nice title page with the current date and the company name, and then when you get to page 2, it actually starts the values here. So that line has been bothering me the whole time. I'm not sure if I can. I'm just going to delete it. Okay, so that is reports. That is a fairly typical example of reports, is putting them into columns, and then if needed be, you can start grouping them, sorting them at the same time, and then putting totals in the different footers. We even have a report footer, so if we added something here in the report footer, this I'm trying to type with one hand because my camera's in the way. This is the end. And where will we see that? Not at the beginning, not at the end of this page. Oop, I clicked the wrong one. Let me go back to print preview. Not at the bottom of this page, But all the way at the very end, as it slowly calculates it, we get the average height of that last area of YT, and then we have this is the end, which appears only one time at the very end because it is in the report footer. So that is reports, and we'll be creating those in class as practice, so you can get used to doing what you've seen here and becoming a lot more familiar and comfortable with creating reports.